Hello and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live and I'm Cyril Stober. Now the federal government has launched the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan to revamp the economy, put an end to the current recession and envisage achieving a 7% growth rate within the strategic plan of 2017 to 2020. Now the document will center on critical infrastructure, develop non-oil sector and improve business environment along other major components of an all-inclusive participation with crucial support at levels of government in the drive towards a sustainable economy. Now the document also contains an inbuilt mechanism to measure success and track hindrances against successful implementation. It is crafted on the understanding that the bane of policy implementation over the years has been linked to corruption, lack of transparency, ambiguous goals, and weak political will. Now, the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan is a comprehensive blueprint, but the challenge lies in its successful implementation. And that's our business tonight. But first, let's get to see this report by Cliff Ayozi.
From the United States, China through Singapore to European unions, periodic plans remain the foundation of their developments. As a result, Nigeria from the time of independence has continued to put in place development plans to guide its evolution from a low-income developing nation to a developed one, guaranteeing prosperity to her citizenry. While question marks have trailed the past national development plans over its implementation, the President Muhammad Buhari administration's Economic Recovery and Development Plan, ERGP, appears to have wound its way into the hearts of experts and Nigerians, extending to international development agencies. This optimism is anchored in the belief that the President has continued to do his utmost in delivering on his commitments to Nigerians. The Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, launched by President Buhari, is a medium-term plan to run from 2017 through 2020 with the aim of first, facilitating Nigeria's economic recovery and secondly, setting it on the path of growth with ambition to ensure Nigeria's economy achieves a growth rate of 7% by 2020. It also targets a real gross domestic product GDP of 81.38 trillion naira, increase in value-added tax rate on luxury items from 5% to 15%, single-digit inflation rate of 9.9% by 2020, and a free float of the naira in the foreign exchange market. But how will the plan impact on the people? The document stated that the economic blueprint will enable the economy increase the level of fresh jobs from 1.5 million in 2017 to 5.1 million by 2020. The plan also has huge plans of investing in the people with healthcare, education, and social inclusion among priority areas. To achieve this objective, it intends to increase the revenue from oil and non-oil sources from 4.94 trillion naira in 2017 to 6.12 trillion naira in 2020, and also divest holdings in some government assets in the oil sector. The vision and strategic objectives of the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan is anchored on restoring growth by achieving macroeconomic stability driven by the real sector and growth-enabling fiscal and monetary policies while factoring in external developments. In pursuit of economic diversification, 6 priority areas were outlined, supported by growth policy enablers.
In short, our aim is to change Nigeria.
Nigeria's Economic Recovery and Growth Plan is also structured to reposition the economy to be globally competitive through enhanced infrastructure development, especially in the areas of energy and roads, and tackling challenges in the ease of doing business. Industrialization of the nation with special focus on micro, small and medium enterprises, agriculture, manufacturing, solid minerals extending to construction and transport infrastructure are among areas of special attention.
Aiming to be one of the manufacturing hub in ECOWAS region, but also in Africa, this showed clearly that Nigeria is boosting his key role as the important economic country in Africa.
In the words of the Minister of Budget and National Planning, Udoma, the broad objectives of the ERGP are to restore growth, invest in the people, and build a globally competitive economy. But how much this could be achieved, observers say, can only be left to time. However, experts remain of the view that good governance remains the major driver of the economic recovery and growth plan. To this, President Buhari assures all Nigerians that his administration will continue to approach the nation's economic challenges in the same manner they are fighting insecurity and corruption.
Well, that report by Cliff Ayoze sets the tone for tonight's discussion. Let's start off by introducing our guests. We'd like to welcome to this program Senator Udoma, who's the Minister of Budget and National Planning. Minister, thanks for joining us yet again on this program.
Thank you, Cyril, for inviting me.
Right. Let me also welcome Senator Ahmed Abdul Qadir, a former Special Advisor on Manufacturing. Thanks for being here again tonight.
My pleasure being here.
Okay. We're also here tonight with Dr. Oke Ikechukwu, Executive Director, Development Academy, Leadership and Governance Consultant. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you.
Let me also welcome to this program Otumba Olufemi Samuel Ayeku, who's a business analyst and payroll management consultant. He's a managing consultant Femade Vantage Group. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Right. Okay. As we always do every Tuesday, we acquaint you with the procedure of this program. At the appropriate time, you can get to join in the discussion in the studio. The various platforms will be on your screen. We advise you take advantage of them. However, for those who would be phoning in, we say this every Tuesday. When your call gets through at the appropriate time, do us a favor, reduce the volume of your TV set. Turn down the volume. That's the way to avoid the hurlback. And then the best way to know that your call has been passed through is when you see your name appear on screen. That means your call has been passed through to the studio, and just go right ahead. Don't bother too much about the greetings. Go straight to the point, ask your question or make a comment, and such issues that you raise, I guess we'll gladly respond to them. So once again, welcome to Tuesday Live. It is the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, and the first question to ask is, well, why now? I suppose it should be clear why a document like that is needed, but again, there are some who would say, perhaps this document should have been coming right at the inception of this administration and not way into when we're struggling, battling with a recession. What do you say, Minister? Why this document?
Thank you very much. Let me start from the commitment that the President made when he was campaigning. His commitment was to fight corruption, to restore security, particularly in the Northeast, and to repair the economy that was clearly broken. So when he came in and as a cabinet, we were sworn in, we were given our marching orders. And we started off with the strategic implementation plan for the 2016 budget. This was a short-term, 1 year. And basically, it was to try and reflate the economy as quickly as possible. And in that document, which I have here, the President promised that for the medium-term plan, we were going to do extensive consultation. And so we embarked on extensive consultation because we had to make sure that the Nigerian people as a whole, that they actually are part of this document, because they have to implement it. We all have to collectively implement it. And so we organized retreats, we got development experts, we had top economists, we had people from the private sector, and we had state commissioners. And then later on, we consulted with the state, because half the economy is really with the state. So we consulted with the commissioners of planning of the states. And then we also consulted with the National Economic Council, which consists of all the governors. We organized a retreat just for the governors, you know, to look at the economy and what we need to do together, to collaborate together in order to be able to solve the economic problems. And then, most importantly, we engage the National Assembly. Because if the National Assembly are not on board, it's very difficult to effectively implement any economic plan, because they have to pass the budget that supports the plan. So it was after the extensive consultation that we finally came out with the document. The document is not being implemented from today. We've been implementing it from inception. Aspects of it, when you look at the document, you'll see the Presidential Committee on Ease of Doing Business. That we've been implementing for about 4 or 5 months. You will see there things that are reflected in the 2017 budget. You know, we intend to promote export promotion zones, special economic zones. It's also in the budget. So consequently, and we've announced sectoral policies. We announced the agricultural green alternative, the 7 big wins in petroleum. In petroleum, we've moved away from cash calls. And so all those initiatives which we have been announcing are all now contained in one document, which makes it easy for anybody dealing with Nigeria who wants to know anything about the Nigerian economy to go to a single document and find everything there. So in short, we've started implementing, we've started working, but this is a document that brings everything together to make it easy for people to access information.
Right, we'll return to you, Minister, but let's get the views of the other guests, and then we'll come back on an important point. So that the document itself admits to the fact that such policies in the past had suffered due to a lack of political will. We'll be asking you what's in this administration to drive that forward. But let's first come to Senator Ahmed Abdul-Qadir.
Yes, well, the first thing I would like to say is to congratulate the Honorable Minister for putting up this excellent work. This is somebody who virtually everybody, especially the National Assembly, believes as a lawyer he cannot do much in the economic field. But to be honest, he has shown the devil. Once again, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I have seen some few places where needs some amends. And that's, for instance, if you look at the area of the petroleum, where they want to make sure that by 2020, the import of petroleum products is cut down by 60%. Since Obasanjo time, way back as in 2005, that has always been what NNPC have been saying, that they will achieve 60% local production. That is 100% of all the 3 refineries combined. That is 10 years back, when those refineries are already old. Now, 10 years later, they are still giving people the impression that they can do 60%. It's impossible. So, Honorable Minister, don't rely on NTC. They will fail you. Because the truth is, those refineries are obsolete. They only allow them to remain there as conduits. Conduit for whatever they will not like anybody to know. But the most important thing is, let's hope by 2021, Dangote refinery is up on stream with all the petrochemical products. That could be a saving grace, with the hope that by then we'll not have another cost of increase in petroleum products. I remain here first.
All right, well, Dr. Ekechukwu.
Well, I'll congratulate the minister too. The document is here at last. But I'll say, like you said at the beginning, it should have come much, much earlier. Close to 90% of the problems the document wants to address were created by the speed and trajectory of the government after it was sworn in. The capital flight that followed, the delay in the appointment of ministers, the lack of clarity about state policy, the confusion within the ruling party itself, took confidence away from actors in the economy and impacted negatively. And with the consequent decline in the value of the naira, we found ourselves in 2016 running a budget. We had run up a budget, but with the rate of inflation, the value was only a percentage of the original budget. So if we had budgeted, say, let's just suppose 100 billion for roads, and all the indices had changed, what we'll have on our hands will probably be about 120 billion. And we still walk around with the delusion that we are putting 200 billion in real terms on the roads. So part of the problems were created. But in specific terms, it says the broad objectives are to restore growth, invest in the people, and build a globally competitive economy. And he pointed out a few things. To achieve that, you optimize local content, empower local businesses, take the Nigerian economy out of recession, place the Nigerian economy on a path of sustained, inclusive, and diversified growth, change Nigeria from an import-dependent country to a producing nation, and turn the country, make us consume what we produce. Good ideas, good wish list. But if you take them individually, you see the indices give you some worries. When you speak about local content, in fact, when you come to the details where I spoke about stabilizing the macroeconomic environment, I ask myself, these very same words and aspirations, if anything, they became a national anthem from Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. So that I'm a bit concerned that the document, good as it is, represents, if you like, a revised standard version of what we've had, diversification. Adesina spoke about it. In fact, at a point, we thought that even if you're walking around the street, a bag of rice will fall on you. He's been out. Audu is talking rice also. So that in all of this, I'm a little pained that, when you look through, you see a document prepared by people who are used to preparing documents like this, and the template for implementation, besides declaration of intention to implement, the process and the template, I don't see in the document. And when you speak of empowering local businesses, in fact, part of the anchor is SMEs. And you ask yourself the role of SMEDAN in all of this. It is not one thing to say I want to transform NTA. It's another thing to actually design what will affect the processes of NTA effectively and with clear measurable results at the end of the day. We might come to details later, but if you take, for instance, just the one, I go back to agriculture. That's one of the focal areas. And I think the government is going to build, 40 more dams. That will ruin substantial local economies that will not draw any benefit from the outcome of the dry season farming, which is largely intended for export and the rest of it. It's going to make less water travel down the Niger. The question of, for instance, the Onitsha port is a delusion. It's never going to happen because there won't be enough water. So you see that the misalignment between the Ministry of Environment and Agriculture could be totally subversive of the good intentions. And when in addition to all of this, you're now going to have 15% VAT, as they will say in Lagos, waiting will do you.
All right. We'll take on some of those issues you have raised, but let's come to Baye.
I've looked at the Economic Recovery Group Plan. The government have tried to do what we've been saying, as if we are reading literature, normal, as usual. But then, when it comes to implementation, it's never see the light of the day, because the policy are not well articulated for implementation because of some of the major problems that we, or even those that actually planned the processes, create for themselves. A case in point, like he has rightly said, like the issue of the taxes or whatever. I've points and time in time we've relate with them in finance ministry, even in national planning or whatever, that the taxes that they tax people, you find people paying tax twice or even very outrageous. And now when I look at that document, the government is deceiving himself, but they can't deceive us in the private sectors because we are out there. You want an investor to come in, and the investor will come to meet about 5 exchange rates. How is that feasible in some of your, for you to achieve some of your GDP that you have articulated that you have? And then when you look at some of the macroeconomics and the microeconomics indices, by the time you look at it and walk through it, by that 2020 you might even fall below 0%. So there, and then you find out that also you look at the rift between the National Assembly and the executive, and then when you look at this, the economic recovery plan you have here, you will see that we have short term, medium term, and long term. This rift will not allow them to achieve some of the well articulated programs they have for the short term or the medium term and the long term. So let me step down for now.
We'll come back to that. Is that a factor? Is that a factor in this, that the purported rift?
Can I say something about that?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I've noted the various comments. Let me start with the issue of the National Assembly and the executive. If you notice, when this plan was launched, the Senate President as well as the Speaker, they were there. They said that this is a plan in which they were consulted extensively, that they are part of it, and that they commit themselves to work with the executive in implementing the plan. So, as far as the NERGP is concerned, it was clear that we are on the same page. We are working together, committed to ensuring that this plan is implemented. So the National Assembly is on board, and we had extensive discussions with them. So that is as far as that issue is concerned. I don't know whether I can touch on one or two other things.
No, we'll return to them, because I just wanted to.
Yes. But on that issue,
because
on that issue,
there's been a lot said about.
On that issue, they made it clear that they were consulted, they are part of it, and they support the implementation.
All right, we'll return to the other points. But joining us in this discussion, we have a guest in our Lagos Network Center, and would like to introduce him and welcome him to this program. Let's welcome Tiliwa Adibaju, who is a financial expert. He joins us from our Lagos Network studio. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
Yes, fine. Well, you've hopefully heard the contributions. Document. Are you still with us, Adebayo? Can you hear me clearly? Can you hear me clearly? Hear me clearly? Hear me clearly?
I think, first of all, let us take a look at the Economic Recovery Growth Plan as a very well articulated document which talks about the current or the contemporary situation and realities of the Nigerian economy. It captures it, and it has articulated very clearly government's plan, at least to get us out of the recession. If you take a look at this report in the context of the Article 4 consultations, which was recently concluded by the International Monetary Fund, one of the concerns they've raised is the issues around policies that will support the implementation of this plan. It is important to understand that the economy is still in a recession. We still have challenges with the foreign exchange regime. We have issues of deteriorating loan portfolios in banks. The central bank needs to do a lot of stress tests. So there's still some structural issues that need to be addressed. And more importantly, the essence of revenues that government is generating is quite critical. Because right now, according to the Article 4 consultation, 66% of our revenues are used to service interest. And this sort of debt service ratios at 66% is clearly not sustainable. And we have a deficit now that is in excess of about 2.5 trillion. And those are the structural issues on the fiscal side to attain fiscal discipline, and of course to take a look at the monetary discipline side of things. But right now I think we can begin to see more of a harmonization between monetary policy and fiscal policy. So what is important eventually is the fact that the key to success for this growth plan is the ability of government to be able to put in the right policies to support this implementation. Because one of the key factors in the economy right now is the issue of business confidence. Business confidence, investor confidence in the financial markets, in the business environment is very low. And we need to put in efforts, the government needs to be able to put in efforts to be able to restore business confidence. Because if you do not restore business confidence with the right policies, it will be very difficult to achieve the sort of growth rates you're looking at. And one of the most important things also is the issues of the import substitution we've been looking at, especially for rice and sugar, which are both items consume a lot of foreign exchange. At the port of Lagos, not very far from the studio here, we have 3 sugar refineries. The capacity of these 3 sugar refineries can support the whole of West Africa. But unfortunately, most of the raw sugar that these refineries use are imported. What the government also needs to do now is to find those policies that could grow the right amount of sugarcane to be able to support these refineries and to be able to achieve the self-sustainability in rice. Rice, for instance, the investment in rice mills across the country only requires about 1.5 billion to be able to close the gap. But you need to be able to create the enabling environment to make sure all these things happen. So the success going forward eventually will be determined by the policies that the government put in place and to be able to tighten up their monetary policy, to improve fiscal policy, and get confidence restored.
All right, thank you. We'll return to you in just a moment. But now, Minister, 7% growth, it's a projection. And some would ask, do you think that's over-ambitious within this period?
I think it's achievable, and I think we have no choice. We must achieve it. Because given our population growth and given where we are, unless we are growing at that level, people will not see visible improvements in the quality of their lives. So we have to achieve it. And let me make a comment on some of the points that have been raised. There's one which is very important on revenues. I think was mentioned about the amount of the debt service revenue ratio. It's a revenue problem, and it is identified in the plan. And we have to drive up our revenues in a dramatic way. It's not so much that the debt is relative to our GDP is less than 20%. It's not so much that the debt is too high, it's the revenues are too low. And the revenues collapsed because the crude oil price collapsed and the quantity of crude oil production also collapsed. At one point last year, we're producing at about 1 million barrels a day. So we have to drive revenues up. And this is what this document identifies. First, we have to increase oil revenues. And the way to increase oil revenues is by increasing production. So we're targeting to get back to 2.2, and then within the plan period to get to 2.5 million barrels. So we're looking at making sure that we give the right policies in the petroleum sector. And one of the things that we did was to get out of the cash calls, and then to engage the communities in the Niger Delta, the states, to try and make sure that we have peace in the Niger Delta. So that is as far as oil. Then non-oil. It's very important that we drive up non-oil revenue. One of the things that we've looked at is our tax to GDP ratio. At the moment, our tax to GDP ratio is only 6%. The average in Africa is 16%. This plan, we have a plan here to take it up from 6% to 15% of GDP. Not necessarily by taking up taxes, but by improving efficiency. Many Nigerians don't pay what they should be paying. That is the truth. So the first thing is we must broaden the tax base, get more people to pay the taxes that is due. As regard to VAT, we're not taking up VAT to 15%. The plan says for luxury items. So it's not going to be across the board, but we have to take up revenues. We must increase our revenues. And that is part of the focus of this, because we cannot grow just on borrowing. We have to drive up our revenues.
All right, the lines are open. We have a first caller, Umar from Birnin, Kebbi, Anachi, I believe. Hello.
Yes. Good evening, Zero.
Good evening.
This is Kebbi. Honestly, I want to look at this topic of economic recovery from different perspectives entirely. I don't believe that economy can be stimulated through austerity measures. I believe economy can be stimulated through increase in spending. And when you look at federal civil servants, for example, from 2016 to date, there is what they call salary cut. Most of federal government agencies were receiving less than what they are receiving in 2016. And I believe the majority of consumers that are consuming the goods in Nigeria are civil servants. Even if the producers produce goods, if the consumers did not buy those goods, they will just be dumped in the warehouses. So we are not getting anywhere. Now, if government wants to stimulate economy in the short term, they should pay all the entitlement of civil servants, including their promotion. I was promoted in 2000. I'm a civil servant. I was promoted in 2016. Luckily enough, I was promoted in 2016 again, 13 and 16. But up to this moment that I'm speaking to you, I have not received the full benefit, full financial benefit of those promotions. So how do you expect me to increase my spending that would in turn increase the productivity of the production? So I want government to look at this angle. Civil servants, salary of civil servants and the entitlement should be paid as a sitting stone. May God continue to bless our country.
All right, thank you very much. As we go on, we'll look into how spending by public servants goes to the economy. But Senator Ahmed Abdul Kadri,
yes,
issues have been raised.
As Mr. Atuale said, the issue with multiple exchange rates is prone to create corruption, whether directly or indirectly. There can't be any exchange rate that is more than one, and you find that people are not benefiting something there. So that is something that must be tackled straight away. Single exchange rate is what is needed for all sectors of the economy. Secondly, I don't see how the central bank that has the monetary policy under its purview can now take over the issue of fiscal policy at the same time. It's wrong. Fiscal policy is something that needs to be handled by both finance and budget. But today, you find that most of the items that we have problems with that is creating a foreign exchange problem in this country is created by the central bank. These 41 items that are banned from getting foreign exchange are those who are consuming all the foreign exchange in the parallel market and the euro change. And it's not right. Even if they cannot get what they want 100%, let them be within the system. They know that they are qualified. So there will be no panicking. If, by doing that alone, the foreign exchange will find its rightful place.
Right, we have another caller. This is a call coming in from Ghana, really. There's a David on the line from Ghana. David, if you can hear me, go ahead. Oh dear. Yes, just go ahead.
Okay. Please, I want to put some suggestion. You know, we are talking about economic growth. Okay. So, what I'm saying is that before all these things, there are some measures that have to be put in place. You know, when you look at all those Western world or Asian world in order to grow.
Okay. It would seem that the connection there is not very good. I don't know if we can go ahead with that call from Ghana, but well, I'd just like to encourage, if you can hear me, to call back, and hopefully the connection will be a lot better. Right, Dr.
Well, yeah, for me, a few issues again. Number one, does this document really make a distinction between economic growth and economic development? Are those terms coterminous? That's an issue that should be addressed seriously. If, for instance, you look at the concept of per capita income, all you need to do is divide the wealth with a number of people. Meanwhile, the wealth may belong to 2 people out of 200. And so that issue needs to be taken on, because the ultimate intended outcome of a development plan is impact on citizen welfare. And I am not seeing how clearly that's about to happen. This year, the world flagged off the Sustainable Development Goals, 17 of them. And the whole idea is every nation and the world is an ecosystem, and everything you're doing must be something that will last. And so let's look at our environment. Businesses have shrunk by more than 60 and sometimes 80% because of what you call replacement cost. If I sell air conditioners, I needed to change probably 17 million to buy 50 air conditioners. With the exchange rate, by the time I finish, I can only buy 7. My business has dropped by over 60%. There's nothing I can do about it. So this matter of the progressive decline of the performance profile of all businesses is actually not being taken into account. Construction companies, retailers, etc. And also in an environment where you have a rent-seeking banking sector that doesn't do any real banking, does not provide funds that could drive development, Within all of this, in the document, then you have 66% for servicing, and at the level of getting the moral integrity to drive the process. Because it's not about economics, really. You're talking about a national growth plan, which will include the fact that this government has stayed long enough for it to pay attention to the entitlement of former governors. It doesn't seem to belong here, but it does. Oshiomhole was Labour leader for as long as anybody can remember. He was leaving office, and the entitlement approved by the State Assembly was 300 million for a house. You see, a national rebirth should not be retired on a document that talks about economic development, economic growth, whereas the intended purpose of this document, I'm sure, is a national growth plan.
Now, you talked about goods coming in. What about local production, right, which the document seeks to promote as well?
Precisely. Local production of what? That's the question we need to answer. And that's why you remember initially I had made the point, is there a conversation with Sweden? What is the Bank of Industry doing? How is it faring? Local production. Let's take, somebody mentioned sugar, I think the Honorable Minister. Yes.
And he mentioned sugar. Yes.
The local economies in the Northeast, driven mostly by sugarcane production, are out because of Boko Haram. The same for tomatoes and the rest of it. So that in this matter of local production, you're also going to ask yourself, what is it you're really talking about? Textiles can come back. We visited the one in Zamfara. The generator there can supply the whole state, but the competition from outside, not monitored, makes them unproductive. Kaduna Textile disappeared long ago. So my concern is when we speak of local production, we can speak about it on paper. How are you going to bring back the tanneries in Kano? So that you may then find a reconfiguration of elite conspiracies where you have on record government expenditure and proof of disbursement for local production. But in terms of what will enter the market as a result, you will see nothing. That's the real worry, not the good intention of government. This document is well intended. The projection is that with this, Nigeria will move from where it is, dependent, importing everything, to where it can produce. But let's suppose all the money is available today. Everybody means well. You know, it's going to take at least 2 years to get things going at the local level. That's the truth of the matter. And so the delusional element of the projection should be pulled out. So we stand on terra firma at the level of realism.
To add something to what he has just said now, the federal government need to move from that thought of made in Nigeria. Let's start thinking like other developed countries, like India. Now, India is moving from make in China. That is to say, let us try and start making these things, producing them. So we move and start changing our orientation and thought from made in Nigeria to make in Nigeria. Okay. And also on the tax issue that the minister said, taxing individuals, corporate bodies, we not encourage investors into the country, or we in the private sectors. What I expect the federal government to do in terms of taxes is, let's have what I term as transaction tax. The federal government or CBN or whatever could just raise up maybe 3% of tax. Now let's look at every corporate tax, every corporate transaction. 3% flows into the banking system. It will help the economy to grow. Not taxing, like the minister just said, increasing taxes outrageously.
Luxury goods.
But I'll return to the issue of taxes with you in a short while. Let's see if we can get this call in. Olayemi, I believe. Olayemi from Abuja.
Hello, good evening.
Hello, is Olayemi still on the line?
Olayemi, this is Olayemi from Barifan, Abuja.
Yes, go ahead.
I commend you for the people that is over.
machinery that will generate more taxes. More than for the vote.
Oh dear.
Can make out.
Well, again, connection problems, and that's gone up there.
Yes.
You raise concerns about taxation, but maybe we should find out. Do you believe that the correct taxes are being paid by those who should pay those right taxes?
As you have in every economy like you have all over the world, we have two issues in terms of taxes: tax evasion and tax avoidance, which are inevitable anyway.
What's the level of that here, you might ask?
The level.
Don't go there.
Can I say something?
Sorry, Honorable Minister. The only thing I'll add to that is that probably is also time as part of a development plan to review what I can only call all of them the development tax. That fund rests on tax, and so many other percentages taken out for these things. And the effect it has had on the Nigerian economy over the years is that it's created a situation where I, as State Fund, could come here, NTA has its budget duly approved for the year, and make further expenses that would probably give NTA 3 times its financial entitlement. Some of them covering the things it had budgeted for. You know, when we were in the Ministry of Education, that's one of the things we discovered. There's a budget to procure VSAT, and then another agency comes to give it to you. You see, that double expenditure is a loophole that has created an industry within the last probably 25, 30 years, and it thrives. That's probably something to review. This one of, you create this agency, it warehouses taxes in order to develop a place. Nothing is happening the way it ought to.
All right, let's go back to Lagos.
All right.
On
this tax.
Yes, the tax, because that's what we're still staying on.
Say something on the tax. Because the idea of transaction taxes is something that's also being looked into. I just wanted to assure you. The idea of moving the tax collection from 6% to 15% is not suggesting any increase in actual tax level. It's just greater efficiency and effectiveness in tax collection, and also looking at alternatives such as the transaction tax that you speak about. We're actually looking at it as I speak. The Ministry of Finance, and it's also addressed here that there is a committee in the Ministry of Finance looking at just these issues. It's also set out in the plan. Thank you.
All right, let's go back to Lagos and get back with Tiliwa Dibaju. We're still on the subject of taxation and, well, tax on luxury goods, which the minister said is going on, and the fact to the need to broaden the tax base.
I think the Honourable Minister has hit the nail on the head in the fact that our tax base here is very low compared to the size of our economy. With all the problems we have in Nigeria and our recession, this indeed is still the largest economy in Africa. And for the largest economy in Africa to be generating a tax base of maybe 6% of GDP, I think is very poor. And I think that optimally we should be able to get, as the Minister has said, to areas of 17%. And I think which is properly more reflective of the economy. And I think the adjustments would make this very happen, because taxation is a very critical part of revenue. Apart from the fact that government has oil revenues, and with this debt service ratio of 66%, if you're getting more taxes, then you're able to reduce that deficit and make it more manageable and sustainable. And with a better tax base, of course, you can be able to do more projects on the capital development side of things and investing in infrastructure and other key projects. Of course, we also have a deficit that we need to finance. So the issues of revenue are very critical. Revenue generation, revenue assurance, not only from the oil sector, but also non-oil. So taxation is a key non-oil generation driver that we're coming from a very low base. And if we can see these improvements in the next 2 or 3 years, it will make a significant impact on the fiscal financing for government.
All right, we've got Abdul Hakim calling in from Lagos. Abdul Hakim, go ahead. Good evening.
Please, I would like to ask about our financial stand.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Hello. So I'm still an undergraduate and I'm a student. So this government to me, it seems like, though I believe in this government, but it's just becoming like a government of just grammar. So please do something on time. People are really suffering, please.
Well, we didn't quite get that. He said some form of tax. What?
This government is just government of grammar.
Oh, okay. All right.
Maybe I should now talk about implementation.
Yes, that's what he's saying. But, well, issues are always raised about that and say there's no shortage of all the documents.
Can I say something about implementation?
Yes,
because I think I should say...
You'll find that these are issues that have been articulated in other policy documents along the years.
We have not been short of good plans. I mean, as you said, I agree. I myself personally have been involved in other plans. I mean, there was the NEEDS program. I was then the chairman of the National Planning Committee of the Senate with the Obasanjo government. I also looked at the 7-point agenda. So I'm familiar with a lot of the development plans that we have had. And it is that gives me an understanding of why were they not effectively implemented. So you need to understand that. And I think there's the mechanisms for effective implementation, as well as the political will, as well as the good governance. I mean, if you have a very corrupt administration, it's difficult to implement any program well. So that is why we are fighting corruption. If you have insecurity, as you said in the Northeast, and all, how can sugar grow? So that's why we're also fighting. And so those things are elements, are part of the good governance and the environment for implementation. To be more specific, there are 4 things that we're doing. Firstly, at the end of this, we've set up a committee of experts working with staff of the Ministry of Budget and National Planning, as well as staff of other MDAs, to roll out a detailed implementation plan, because you have to have it in some detail, year by year, setting particular goals. That is currently a work in progress. When it is ready, we'll also put it on our website. That means that we can track exactly where we want to be, when we want to be, which project. That has to be done. We are working on that. The second is that because we are this plan, under this plan, the presidency, we're setting up a special delivery unit in the presidency, because you need the clout of the president himself and the presidency sometimes to get people really moving. So there's a delivery unit that is going to be set up in the presidency. As we speak now, we're already looking at interviewing people for that. The third is that we're going to have task forces. There are 5 execution priorities. You have agriculture and food security. There'll be a task force on agriculture and food security. That task force will consist of not just the federal, state governments, and sub-task forces looking at rice, looking at sugar. Already we have a task force on rice, which involves governors of states, as well as, and it's chaired by His Excellency the Vice President himself, with the Minister of Agriculture there. So you'll have a task force on power, on energy and power. Right now we have one already on power that has come up with a power recovery plan. So we'll have that. We'll have one on transportation, and we'll have one on industrialization. So we'll have task forces on all those. In addition to that, we will be having engagements with the private sector. We will break up the private sector into sectors. Take manufacturing. We will be having meetings sector by sector, led in this particular thing by the Minister of Investments, Trade and Industry. So we'll look at, for instance, we'll try and replicate the success in cement. You know, we will look at petrochemicals. We'll look at textiles. What incentives do they need? We will relate directly with the operators. We'll sit down with them and say, okay, if we give you, what do you need from us? If we give you this, what do you promise to achieve? And we want to tailor our incentives, not on the basis of intention, but results. So there are a number of things that we're doing, because ultimately, this is a very good document, everybody has said, but people are concerned about the implementation. So these are our implementation strategies. We're going to have it, and ultimately, the most important element of all this is that the president is solidly behind it, and he wants this to work. Because he contested election several times, and he did that with one overriding thing driving him, which is to change Nigeria for good. And you cannot change Nigeria unless you change the economy.
Okay, let's go on to Abiodun, who's calling in from Abuja here. Abiodun, are you still on the line? Abiodun?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
I want to commend the Honorable Minister, but my question is going to the man behind the Honorable Minister. Because I was looking at this figure, was part of the Chairman Committee on House of Environment on endangered species and deforestation. That is the man behind the minister. Minister was done, sir. The question I want to ask is the committee that is shared, how effective the committee have related towards the deforestation of our forest, because now we are speaking on the economic recovery. And I knew we can't be speaking on economic recovery or killing some business. So how have you worked on this, sir? And when are you implementing your policy? Thank you.
Right. I think there's a... It's obvious
Did you get it?
There's a,
no, I don't know.
There's a bit...
Okay.
You did?
Okay. You go ahead.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Well, thank you, Mr. Abiodun. Well, already we have submitted our report to the Honorable Minister of Environment for implementation. And I believe if he is able to implement most of the recommendations successfully, a lot of our issues with the forestry will be addressed successfully. And obviously, the forest is one of the biggest areas that we've not been looking at how best we can harness the resources coming out of the forest, whether it's in terms of employment or in terms of foreign exchange earning. But all of that has been addressed in our recommendation to the Honorable Minister of Environment. And I sincerely hope if you have time, you get in touch with the director in charge of forestry. He will update you on most of what other recommendations. Maybe perhaps you will have something that you'll benefit from. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, now,
On the comments.
Well,
sorry,
yeah,
I just
he
addressed
still have
that
the
issue. The other issue now that I had wanted to address in what we're doing now is regarding the roadmap. The Honourable Minister has indicated how far they've done with the roadmap and the sectorial implementation that they intend to do. I believe that within 3 months of each of this, the sectorial thing, you need to have a real feedback. Not to talk of 6 months, then to talk of a year. Every 3 months, you must have feedback from all the sectors to know exactly where we're heading, whether we're making progress or not.
I agree with that.
And then secondly, when we talk about the monitoring and evaluation committee, I personally believe if it's going to be handled by the economic team, there'll be some progress. But if you leave it in the hands of presidency generally, you may regret what you've done in terms of all the actions. So don't rely on the presidency, but rely on the economic team. You'll see progress.
Well, taking up on those, the matter of feedback, also in the feedback, they should focus on impact, not record of expenditure. Last year, it was always distressing listening to the finance minister talking about how much they had disbursed. We've released this amount. It's scandalous in public communication in government. You're telling us, okay, let's suppose I want to talk about the Kaduna Rail. I say, oh, this government is very hardworking. It has spent 3 billion naira to build the rail to Kaduna. Whereas I can also tell you, this government is working and is concerned about the citizens. For instance, the person who comes to Kaduna and goes back, instead of spending 3,000, now spends 800. That means he has an extra so and so amount to play with. That means, do you get it? The human element in public communication. The government focuses too much on how, release it where? You say you release money, rice is going up, transport is going up, fuel is not available, and that's alienation government, not just without knowing that's what it's doing. But on the more substantive matter, the minister raised about special unit. For me personally, I'm a stickler for institutional integrity. And when functions of institutions of state are being balkanized and given out, whether you like it or not, you're increasing the cost of public administration, and you're actually probably in the end driving inefficiencies. I will look at a few examples. Talking about task forces, under the special delivery unit in the presidency, and the supervision. You are creating a new bureaucracy, and you see, let us not go back. Back then, when Obasanjo was to come in as president, you know, there was a campaign to retain the PTF. I was one of those who worked very hard against it for a simple reason. The PTF came on because the institutions of state had become inefficient. Everything the PTF was doing was either for works. Health minister said no. It was a stopgap. To enable this fellow recover, you cannot make an eternal arrangement for somebody to carry drip all the time. Now, my concern is that we may be going back to this. It will cost Nigerians more and deliver less. And then you create reporting lines that nobody can monitor. Everybody becomes a mini minister. So something that should be under transport or national planning, you have files you can't access, so you can't plan. That's the observation in that regard. And so that way we avoid the growing danger of mistaking regime goals for national goals. 7-point agenda, change agenda, transformation agenda. National development plans are what governments drive, not what occurs to anybody who is elected at any particular time. So finally, on the point about taxation, tax and taxation are taken seriously in nations that do not draw the bulk of their income from rent. That's why you say taxpayers' money. I pay tax for the state to work. That's why the man in England, the American will not forgive you for evasion. You're spending his money. We collect oil from, no, we don't collect. Somebody collects oil from the ground where we stand, declares what he likes, and then we collect money from it and spend. So that the crisis of tax integrity, if we could do a lot of work, and I believe what they want to do now is to block it further. So, and also, finally, public service. Ultimately, the Obasanjo government set up a one-shop stop that will give the government an idea of how the state is performing. Servicom. Everything ought to come from that place. What is Servicom doing? This government should set up a special whatever and either make it function or scrap it.
Okay. We'll take a short break at this point. When we return, we'll look at all the aspects of this growth plan, and hopefully we'll get in more of your calls. But stay with us on NTA Tuesday Live. We'll be back shortly.
Nigerians, our fearless officers and men of the Nigerian military are winning the war against Boko Haram. Today, all occupied territories have been recovered and Boko Haram has been degraded. Our affected brothers and sisters are getting their lives back. However, they are now after you and me. In our mosques, churches, schools, motor parks, markets, entertainment centers, and public gatherings. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me. Nigeria, unite against terrorism.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
The struggle for independence had been a long and tough one. Our founding fathers and compatriots sacrificed their comfort and even shed their blood. We cannot at this point in history afford to spirit away their sacrifices for immediate but temporary gains of today. Let us emphasize what unites and not what divides us. Working for the unity of purpose with a stronger vision for a better tomorrow. NTA, growing with the nation.
Nigeria, the only country we can train with remarkable potentials to excel. Let us believe in ourselves and change our attitude for the sake of our country and generations unborn. Let us revive our cultural values, which are our essence as a nation. Let us renew the spirit of patriotism and hope in our dear country. Do not take or give bribe. Be punctual always. No more African time. We can't expect to be global citizens and operate on African time. Join the queue. Insist that people are attended to on a first-come basis, no matter who they are or where they come from.
Nigeria, good people, great nation.
Make you report any crooked person, object or wakajube movement to police and security agent demo.
The security of our nation now work for all of us, plus including me and you.
Nigeria, make we unite against terrorism. Now, Federal Minister of Information and Culture bring on this message.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying with us. It's the economic growth plan, and just before the break there were concerns raised about the use of task forces, but then the minister would address that right away.
Yes, thank you very much.
If we're expanding the bureaucracy.
Yes, thank you very much. We're not expanding the bureaucracy at all. The task forces consist of people who are already doing the job. I mean, I spoke about the one for rice. There's the governor of, I think, governor of Kebbi, is the vice president, is the minister of agriculture, and other relevant. So basically, it's to bring people together who are actually doing that job, bring them together so that they work as a team. Is what you may call team formation, as opposed to no additional person is being hired at all.
Okay.
And where we have a private sector persons who are involved, for instance, if we did a task force on, say, sugar, we'll probably call in one or two people in the private sector who are involved in operations. So there's no additional expenditure whatsoever.
Okay. Let's take this question to a Lagos network center where Adibaju is, and it was raised by, I think it was Dr. Ikechukwu who raised this here, the question of growth and development. Okay, and would like to get your input on this, because we hear this used all the time, that sometimes you might mistake growth for development.
I think clearly there are two separate issues here, and I think let's take a look at the growth plan, for instance, which is growth as a percentage of measured by GDP growth. 7% GDP growth is actually very attainable because before the economy crashed in a spectacular manner over a 2-year period, we had achieved close to 8 to 8.5% growth in Nigeria before. In fact, about 4 or 5 years ago, Nigeria's growth was in that region. It was only in the last 2 years we saw growth plummet, GDP growth plummet from about 7% all the way down to about -2%. And right now we're still in negative growth territory. So that talks about GDP growth. When you talk about development, then you want to measure development by certain indices. For instance, how many megawatts of power are you generating? So if you take a look at Nigeria, which is the largest economy in Africa, you find that in terms of the development indices, in terms of power generation, you're taking a look at literacy rates, you're taking a look at other indices, such as those sort of development indices. Compared to the size of our economy, we're lacking in terms of development of basic infrastructure and things like that. So I think while growth is desirable, development is also very important. But I think one of the things that I want the Honorable Minister to take back is that a caller came and said he didn't quite understand what we were all talking about, and the fact that he doesn't see any impact, and he feels that a lot of people are suffering. One thing the minister must do with this economic recovery growth plan is to be able to see how this impacts people, especially from the employment point of view, the social side of things and their school feeding programs and all the social interventions that we're looking at. It is important that you relate this to what is really happening in Nigeria. A lot of people are suffering, and they've seen the value of their incomes eroded significantly by inflation. So it's important that when we talk on these sort of forums, we connect to the masses of Nigerians, and we want to be able to alleviate their sufferings and provide relief for them. And the best way we need to do that is to be able to create employment. And one of the things that we have not been talking about is employment generation, which will come with the growth of the economy. So I think it's also very important, because at the end of the day, that is where you begin to hear things like you talk about infrastructure, and then people begin to swing in the direction of stomach infrastructure. It is a lack of, people talk about stomach infrastructure because it's a lack of understanding of the sort of things we're talking about here. And it's important that we connect this plan to the general people to be able to explain that eventually they will be able to get jobs that they can use to provide for themselves and their families.
All right, let's bring in Wale, who's calling in from Lagos as well. He's on the line from Lagos. Wale, hello.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, Wale, go ahead.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Yes, please, I would like the Honorable Minister to notice one particular issue, the debt profile of the country. And I think that one would stop any development you have in mind. Hello?
Yes, go on.
The debt profile of the country.
Okay.
All right.
Well, that's it, straightforward.
Okay. Let me quickly answer that, and then I'll go to the inclusiveness, the development, the question about development. I think I had said that the answer and the plan here is to grow revenues. So once you grow revenues, then the debt is sustainable. So the issue is growing revenues, and we have a plan here to grow revenues in various ways. There's the immediate short term, which is to restructure some of our assets, to look at some of the, for instance, the joint ventures, bring down the government take, and and free up some funds to use immediately to address the problems of this country, and to make sure we reduce the suffering in the country. And I also wanted to say that in terms of development, if you look at, and I'm going to read from the document to show you that this is in the document, it says the ERGP will invest in the Nigerian people by increasing social inclusion, creating jobs, and improving the human capital base of the economy. Interventions to create jobs are a core part of the ERGP, which aims to reduce unemployment and underemployment, especially among the youth. We will accordingly prioritize job creation through the adoption of a jobs and skills program for Nigeria, including deepening the existing Empower programs and launching other public works programs, and so on and so forth. And one of the things that we want to focus on is the ICT. Accordingly, all capacity building and skills acquisition interventions will be targeted at youth-dominated sectors, such as the ICT, creative industries, and services. there is an initiative which is being promoted and driven by the Ministry of Communications and the Ministry of Investments. And that has to do, it's called the smart technology. So we want to increase internet access, have internet hubs, and train, people in the whole ICT technology. Put funding, in ICT technology, so that, because this is the areas that we can create a lot of jobs and opportunities for young people. And ultimately, we want to use technology, we want to leapfrog what other countries are doing. Use technology to really drive innovation.
All right, let's bring in Coyote, who's calling in from Ondo, quickly. Coyote, go ahead, and then we'll return to Dr.
Hello.
Yes, hello, Coyote, go ahead. Just turn down the volume of your TV.
Yeah, I've turned it on.
Good, go ahead now.
Hello, I want to speak about the tax. Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to speak about the tax. The tax for Nigeria, we doesn't give the tax to government in Nigeria. All our leaders are always deceiving us. They haven't told us the truth. And we have to, many people are suffering in Nigeria. We have to tell our president, government to help us to have some reason to get everything down. Please, we are begging the government to do everything because people are suffering at Nigeria now. Thank you. God bless you.
Okay, thank you. It's another appeal, but Dr. Ikechukwu was going to come in just before we had...
he's still on this growth and development.
Yes.
GDP ratio determines economic growth, and GDP can come just from oil. And there is no factory producing anything, no local, and you're recording economic growth. So that's why I'm concerned that the document is couched in terms of economic growth. Whereas I believe the focus should be, of course, the content points towards economic development, and of course, this is extraneous to the accessibility to the content of this document, like previous other documents, is limited by the language used. Yes, and that's one thing. It's not peculiar to this document. It's become an element of government communication. Yeah, there are areas that you can avoid the technical element, but it's become likely an elite conversation, and it's not trickling down.
There is also...
Sorry to add to that. Sorry, please.
Yes.
I also want to take the minister up, because after reviewing the 140-page document, the government has no clear-cut policy statement and action on educating the citizenry
about the plan.
And how will government bring Nigerians into these programs, since the projection is on the poor and the vulnerable? So there is need for them to make, at least let the minister let us know what is their plan, what is their take on how the poor and the vulnerable get to understand. We all here are understanding this. And then also, let me just take the minister up on this. Then, if you find in other country, National Planning Commission is domiciled under the presidency. But in Nigeria here is domiciled under the Ministry of Budget. So you find that the implementation and continuity of whatever economic recovery or growth plan we are having now will not be sustainable. Even if it's going to be sustainable, the percentage of good result we have will be limited.
Okay. Fine. So that's the minister.
Can I just respond immediately to that? I think it's a very good point. It's a very, very good point about...
and also, I want the minister to give us an idea of the cost. Sometimes you have plan, and when you have a plan without a cost, to me, it's not achievable.
Let me start with the question of getting this plan to Nigerians.
Okay.
I think the two of you both mentioned it, and we do have a plan for that.
Okay.
Not everything is in this document, but what we plan to do, we have already commissioned somebody who is going to reduce this to what you may call a citizen's guide. Then we're going to get it in different languages as well. And in addition to that, we will get, we'll break it down in terms of in simple language for people to understand. What, in the end, this document, what really is it about? I'll tell you. It's about self-reliance. This document is about exactly what the president said. Grow your own food, produce what you consume what you produce, be self-reliant, add value. What we want is basically this. And we should embrace technology, embrace ideas, embrace investment from wherever it comes, and domesticate it for use in Nigeria. Domesticate it to add value. In fact, every Nigerian, what we want is, and there will be a campaign to try and get everybody involved in this. Every Nigerian should ask himself, what additional value can I add? What can I add? If all of us are adding value, we will transform this economy. We cannot just wait and be consuming whatever we get from abroad. We should take pride in what we produce. We should look at the things that we can add. This is a simple message. We will reduce it into a form that people can relate to. And so that is the plan. So we'll bring it down to this. But the basic thing is really, when you wake up in the morning, you should ask yourself, all these God-given resources that we have, what can I, as an individual, what value can I add? And that is what we want to do.
Okay. Yes. Value addition.
Right.
In short, is what is called local content. Because whatever you do,
that is true.
So long as you have any local addition, it amounts to local content into whatever is imported. Now, that's the need for us to have an agency under whichever ministry, whether it's trade and investment, whether it's under national planning or finance. That local content is what will always evaluate whatever you intend to do to any investor. So that will now show how much are we now gaining in terms of our productivity. What is Nigerian really understanding in terms of what we can do to become self-reliant? Because if we don't start value addition in whatever we do, we'll always remain dependent country, and that's always dangerous.
Let us look at, well, if you were still going to project on that. Well, go ahead.
The aspect is, the greatest part of our GDP in this country is in the informal sector.
Yes.
Informal sector is totally neglected, and informal sector, those who are in the informal sector are being seen like beggars and they are not respected. And we must change our trade. Because if those who are in the informal sector are humiliated and decided not to do what they're doing, what you have there are criminals, and you cannot control it. So it's important we give a very good look at informal sector.
All right, now back to the phones from Ibadan. We have Precious calling in from Ibadan. Sorry? Cassius, I believe. Okay, Cassius.
Yes, Cassius is my name.
All right, Cassius, go ahead.
I want to look at the issue of taxation. Taxation, I think, is important for generating finance for government. But the way we go about it here, I don't think it's ideal. Because if we are talking of taxation, we should consider the companies and the small-scale establishments that are just trying to get foundations, like the market women, the taxi drivers, and other small businesses. We should have some consideration for these persons. At least the government that they want to even give some consideration to people who are less privileged, some kind of finances. So let us, when we talk of taxation, let us focus on those well-established companies who are well-founded, who have foundations. Those companies can be identified through their bank accounts, not just for taxing people who are trying to establish. You know what I mean? People who have not gotten foundation, it is not ideal. They don't do that anywhere because, a government for the people has to be for the people, especially in this time of difficulties. So let us take it completely out of. Those people who have no foundation should not start paying taxes. It is when you are fully well established that you should talk of paying taxes. Government should help you to establish. There are other ways government can raise funds. Like government, this APC government, they actually have some good plans. But they talk and talk too much. We don't too many actions in place.
Okay.
Like diversification, agriculture is a good source of income. But if the way they talk about it, they go about it that way, I tell you the truth, we should have been getting some good dividends out of it. But they talk too much about it, we don't see the outcome. If we go into agriculture, we go into production, and we go into manufacturing, I think that will give us good source of income. You know, so that is my candid contribution. Thanks a lot.
Right, thank you very much.
I want to react to.
Yes,
I react to something. Two things very quickly. Just in his own in person, the fact of every citizen gets a sense of ownership and involvement through taxation. So there's nobody who is ineligible. The perception that the bigger you are, you should be the ones taxed, it's divisive. It's not part of political or economic history. Now, the other point, which is an aside but central to this, the minister had mentioned translating the document to Nigerian languages, and he set up the alarm signal for me. You know, one was the level of literacy. Two is going to be more of a procurement thing. It will be printed, distributed. Will it be read? I believe that part of what one would like to see as change is to follow communication channels that work. If I'm sent to Kano to talk to the local people, and I'm able to get the emir to listen to me, and is able to get some community leaders to listen to me, I have got the people. These are the centers of power. Okay. I want to communicate in the southeast to a particular town, and I'm able to get the town union president, the matter is closed. Not only will it cost less, they are looking at faces that they consider believable. So I believe a new approach, identify the centers of power and use them, and let's stop the usually elite thing, come to the state capital, assemble a crowd of easily bored, you know, important people. They sit down, these are not the people you want to talk to.
Right. Identify influencers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also the government should look at it that it's going to be a private sector and public sector participation. And you look at the media, where you use the media, have some films about this and pass the message, not just bulky documents.
The
like
media
that.
should report on projects. They know what to do.
Private sector's participation.
All right, we have a call
very
coming in.
Useful suggestions.
All right, we have a call coming in from Kaduna. Just go ahead and introduce yourself. Calling in from Kaduna. Hello.
Okay, good evening. My name is Kona Mata from Kaduna State. And hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, go ahead.
Okay, yes. So, please, I just want to say, I was listening to what the Minister of Planning and Budget said.
It's not talking.
Sorry?
And the thing about, I think, the country, the economic situation, considering what the central bank has been doing, for the fact that the monetary policy rate has been raised, making borrowing more expensive for citizens, and it's a climate where it doesn't encourage investment, and when borrowing is costly for the
it's not working.
Unfortunately, we're finding it extremely difficult to get your contribution. The audio on your call is very poor indeed, so it's almost impossible to get what you're saying. We might just encourage you to call back if you can. And gentlemen, there's another aspect of this I want us to look at, and I want to start this with
Tilewa.
with Tilewa Adibaju. And this is all the time when plans are rolled out like this, we hear what the federal government has set about doing. But of course, it's not all the federal government that is Nigeria. We've got the states. And it said that if the states and local governments do not key into these fine plans, nothing will be driven. Do you see the states keying into this ARG?
Honourable Minister said, I think there were consultations at the Economic Council level.
Yes,
which
consultations go on all the time over these issues.
One of the problems of the country today is the fact that most state governors cannot pay salaries, and in some states where the civil service income is critical to the economy, the recession is much felt. The impact of the recession is much more pronounced. In saying so, however, it's important to realize that this is just a roadmap. And the roadmap we're talking about is the policy that is being set at the federal level. And at the end of the day, this is the easy part of this whole document. And I think the next phase is the implementation, which is not only getting the states to key into this with their own policies, but also even before the states, the various agencies within governments. Financing is key. There are so many development banks, Bank of Industry, Bank of Agriculture. There's a new development bank that is focused on SMEs. The central bank has an intervention program. It's very important that we key this financing into an articulated program so that at least the agencies at the federal level are very well coordinated. If we get that coordination within the agencies at the federal level, especially the financing institutions, and all the other general implementation agencies, it becomes a lot easier for the states to begin to also key into this. And of course, the dialogue with the National Economic Council, where the governors meet at the federal level, I think will also be an important platform to be able to sell this document, to drill it down to the states. And because of the challenges of the economy today, I think the states are now getting very close to the federal government and aligning their policies to that of the federal government. And I think this is very important. And like I said, it's important to understand that this document is not the savior, it's not utopia, it's not guru. This document is only a roadmap. And the overall success of this document will have to be backed up by the policies that are going to be put in place, the coordination of the central bank, the coordination with, of course, the Minister for Budget and Planning, Finance Ministry, and the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Investments. These four institutions are going to be key to the success of this document's implementation and, as you've said, also selling this document down to the state levels. Because within these four institutions, which are not intervention ministries like transport or works, these key ministries are policy formulation ministries. And their working together will be very important in selling this at a national level and also at the subnational level to the states and invariably to the various local governments. So really that is where the challenges are. Policy is very important, and of course the Senate President says also that they have about 11 economic policy bills that they want to pass to help revive the economy. So the National Assembly is also very important, also apart from the state government, so that the key policy changes that the planning ministry might want to push forward, or trade and investment or finance, should be supported by the National Assembly to enable us get some sort of cohesion and ensure that there's coordination, harmonization in the implementation. Once we have that, I think the state governments and the rest of the country will fall into line.
Right, Minister.
I'd like to add something to that. I thank Tilewa for the comments he made. It is true, correct, that the National Economic Council has been very effective. Meet every month, and under the leadership of His Excellency the Vice President, we've gotten not just the federal government talking to the governors, but we get the governors talking to each other. And we've encouraged, and they themselves have decided to work on collaborating. And of course, one of the one that demonstrated this level of collaboration was what happened over rice production between Lagos and Kebbi. And indeed, that was why, if on page 124 of the plan, we actually, if it can be seen, there's a photograph of Lake Rice. Now, Lake Rice is Lagos Kebbi Rice. And basically what happened was that the consumption, the major consumption is in Lagos, major production is in Kebbi. So the rice was brought and milled in Lagos. And they work together and they share it, and that's why it's called Lake Rice. And so this is the sort of collaboration that is going on as we speak, amongst the states. We are working very, very closely with the states. For instance, ease of doing business. We sat down with the governors of the states, and we identified the various things that we need, the bottlenecks to business. Ease of getting land approvals, from state governments. And we sat down with them and said, these are areas you have to. Ease of getting building permits. And so we're having peer review amongst the states, trying to encourage them, because we have made it very clear to them, and everybody understands it, that unless we work closely together, that we cannot achieve these objectives. So just to emphasize that we are working very, very closely with the states. And when the plan was launched, the chairman of the Governors Forum, was there himself, and he made it clear. He made a commitment on behalf of the states that they were part of this plan, that they have been, we have had extensive discussions with them, and that they are going to key in, and they're going to make sure. So this is a national plan, and I believe that
under the ease of business you talk about, how much is going to access to finance?
Yes, that is very important, and that is why the government is supporting a number of things. These special institutions, the new one, the Development Bank, which is targeting SMEs. So in addition to that, the Bank for Agriculture is being recapitalized. We're also putting additional money behind the Bank for Industry. The Central Bank has special lending schemes for farmers, the anchor borrowing. And all these are below at single-digit interest rates. Ultimately, we would like to, over the plan period, to bring interest rates down to single digits, but that will take us some time. In the meantime, we have to ensure that these priority areas, agriculture in particular, industry, SMEs, that we try and ensure that they get affordable financing.
Well, Madam Minister, well, the only disagreement I have with you is you are now talking about bringing down this cost of borrowing to single interest, but working on time. I think you are the time. You should work on it now, because all the industries are suffering. The SMEs, everybody relies on access to finance.
Which is
today,
not
access to finance is
zero.
a big problem. We have seen how humble you have been trying to put this in for the interest of the masses. But one single thing that is bothering everybody is finance. All of this ICT we're talking about will never succeed. All of those, this one we have in the incubators and in the shelves for the new, this one will never take off so long as we don't have access to finance for those young men and women. Help us.
Thank you.
And to add what the minister said, ICT or technology or whatever, power still remain the bane of development and getting result of this economic recovery.
I agree.
Power. So the government, the document I see there do not give me a convincing something on solutions in terms of power deliverables.
Can I answer that? Well, power, because it's so important.
Yes, very, very power is
power is very important, which is what one of our execution priorities, power. Already the cabinet has just approved the power sector recovery plan, which is also indicated here. Our approach to power is that every segment of the chain has to be viable. You know, so discos, distribution has to be viable, transmission, generation. Right now, they are not. So you're having a problem because the discos are not collecting enough revenues, and so they're not able to pay the gencos who are supplying the power. And so the gencos are saying, well, we have to pay the gas who are supplying us the gas with the feedstock. And so
gas is not available.
So basically, that is the problem. What we have done is this. We have the NBET, which is the aggregator of this, the NBET. Now, what we have done is we've raised funds. I think it's about 700 billion approved by this thing, to fund NBET, so that NBET will have the ability to pay for the power. Because if you can't pay for the power, the gencos will not produce. Now, and we will have a period of time within which to pay. So as the gencos get more profitable, as they improve their metering, and as we adjust some of the tariffs, particularly for the larger consumers. So it's a 3 to 5 year plan. These things will take time. It's a 3 to 5 year plan which we are working on to ensure that it is, the whole system is viable. And that is what we're doing with power.
Just, I mean, on the lighter note, you know, as the minister was speaking, I was asking myself, how would he feel if tomorrow people brought placards to his office protesting against gencos? That there's these people called gencos, that they're probably not Nigerians, that they was taking power. You know, discos, gencos, and so generation companies. Can we come down with it?
There's some
generating.
Well, of course, I know. But
yes, a question has been put in by one of the viewers, has to do with power, as you say, being key to this. And we're looking at this document, this policy, that's particularly as it applies to industrialization. And they're saying, what specifically is in here to address what we see now as the current trading of blames between the generating companies and the distribution companies, while power keeps dropping? A few days ago, it was said that some 2,000 plus,
less than
10, not taken off,
had now been taken off. Now, if this document would drive industrialization, what specifics do we have in it that will address this?
Sorry, it is his document, so let me tell you what I saw in it. He can take us on all later. Now, the crisis, as claimed, is that, you know, you generate electricity, you can't keep it in a cup. It goes.
It goes, yes.
Now, the person who wants to sell it to him needs to pay. He doesn't have money, and so he won't get it. So what I think the government is doing is create a pool of funds that is managed, and you call it X. Now that institution buys up the power. So it pays you, that's generating, you get your money. It gives him credit, and it supplies Nigerians electricity. That's what I understand to be the plan.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's what I understand.
That's correct. Very well.
So, you know, but the sooner we see it, the better. You know?
The sooner the better.
But that's the plan I saw from the document.
There are very many issues, but we're determined to take them one by one and deal with them. And power is very important.
Okay, many issues, and you're determined, and that brings us to the question of the political will as we begin to wind down this discussion. And then we'll start with the minister on this one and go around with all our guests. And the feeling is, yes, 2017 to 2020, it is expected that this fine document would have advanced a lot in addressing the issues here. But again, I say, by mid-2018, it's all about 2019. And the implementers, those who drive this, this document, including the bureaucracy, would be looking towards 2019. How would you insulate that from this?
Indeed, the success of this plan is important for winning re-election. So it should concentrate the mind even more Because this is what the party will go to the election with. It is this success. And so it actually will concentrate the mind even more to try and make sure that this is successfully executed.
Okay.
Yes, as the Honorable Minister has said, yes, this is something that will work towards 2019. But I will suggest that this document is totally isolated from the political hands, so that those who are the technocrats can really work on this with a timeline on which to make sure that this thing is achievable. That's my...
Okay, well, in terms of political will, first the intention is clear, but I can tell you that in terms of public confidence, there's limited public confidence, given also the trajectory of the anti-corruption war and several other things you see. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be gathering a lot of steam. So government should be aware that there isn't a lot of excitement, and so should then try to prove Nigerians wrong on the matter. That it's suspected that this whole thing is a document, and the government has been slow on everything, probably including breathing, and that now it's come out with a document. And also this is probably also the opportunity to make a further point. Where is Obasanjo's 6th document? Where is Yar'Adua's 7-point agenda? I never understood anything beyond the 3 points, but he said it was 7. Where is Jonathan's transformation agenda? This nation is not Ludo. You know, where if you let the board and another person comes in, we exchange it, we scatter it and start the seed. This is a nation, a human ecological system that must run on sustainable principles and template. And now we've got this document. If the president returns, he's not likely to continue with it, for all I know. So the point I'm making being, let us stop embarrassing ourselves at the federal level by always coming up with documents. Nigerians are accustomed to not taking government documents of this nature seriously. Because when did Yar'Adua complete his 7-point agenda? Did Jonathan complete his own? So the game of dancing up and down with documents is become entirely boring. We need results. That's what will give credibility to this document.
Right. To add something to that, I asked the Honorable Minister that in some countries you find out that National Planning Commission is domiciled under the ministry, while why is it that in Nigeria they did not try to work towards putting under the presidency? The Honorable Minister did not answer that. Okay. Then also I want...
Is he the one who put it?
Let me finish. Sorry, and I don't want us to mix fighting corruption with economic growth.
Okay.
That we would... It's a different ball game altogether.
Sorry, my brother.
It's
I happened to be in the council at that time when the decision was taken to take out the economic department out of the presidency to a full-fledged ministry so that it gives it a higher
autonomy and greater performance.
So it's higher than being in the presidency, being a ministry. Well, so that's what it is. Otherwise, if they are there, they won't be a minister, only economic advisor. And economic advisor
is a staff of the president, yes. You're correct. And also, you know, he pounced on the minister. You know, they say if you see somebody you feel you can beat up, you feel like fighting. He let those who took the decision to capture the man who's just put on the job.
All right. So, back to the Lagos Center, and as we wind it down, let's hear from you.
Cyril, I think what is important now is that we have this document. Right. It's better late than never. The bane of the government before was the inability to articulate and document their economic policy and direction. That is no longer the case. So we need to move forward. One of the key challenges in trying to move forward this sort of document is the financial system. Our financial system is currently not very strong. There are fragilities and cracks that are beginning to appear within the system. The banking system currently has a record levels of non-performing loans of over 2 trillion naira, and it is alleged by the NDIC that 40% of those NPLs are insider-related credits. Having said that, I think we have most of the intervention is being done by the central bank, the Bank of Industry, Bank of Agriculture, Nexim, and specialized intervention agencies to be able to get concessionary finance. Now, the capacity of these agencies, even with the recapitalization of the Bank of Agriculture, is going to be called into question when the main banking system itself is suffering from a lot of issues with dollar liquidity, and most of the banks currently are not lending, even at the rates of 25 to 30%. And the fact that some of these banks need to be recapitalized, some of these banks have spent so much time within the what we'll call the discount windows, and the central bank needs to be able to show some direction in this by carrying out stress tests. Deutsche Bank, which is one of the largest banks in the world, failed stress tests in America. But because we know, everybody in the international investment community knows what the condition of Deutsche Bank is and the sort of backing, there is confidence. So it is important that we fix the financial system to be able to deliver this plan, both the general banking system and, of course, the intervention agencies that we want to use to be able to drive this plan. Because without a proper financial structure and a financial system, the funding of these plans would be very difficult, and we can see failure. It is also important to focus some of these interventions. As the minister said, take a look at your rice task force, for instance. We understand, for instance, that Olam, for instance, has made an investment of $150 million in Nasarawa State of a 10,000 hectare rice farm, which can supply maybe about 10% of the capacity that is required for rice production, for rice demand in Nigeria. So invariably what that means is that with $1.5 billion, we can satisfy the demand for rice in Nigeria by replicating 10 farms such as the one that Olam owns across the country. $1.5 billion in terms for Nigeria is not a lot of money. So a lot of all these plans are very, very achievable if we have the right financing structure in place and the right sort of intervention. Because with 1.5 billion, if we can meet the demand for rice in Nigeria, then a lot of things begin to happen. The sort of poverty alleviation, the sort of economies of scale you can get, the ripple effect, and the multiplier effect you'll see with employment generation, creating value, creating jobs for people and ordinary Nigerians, very important. So I think we need to start looking at fixing our financial system to be able to deliver this economic recovery growth plan.
All right, thank you very much. And well, it's on. Well,
I just want to say that the things that Tidewa has been talking about are all here. That the central bank will strengthen the banking sector and increase its resilience through certain activities outlined below, reinforce supervision of banks, reporting transparency, encourage banks to improve their capital adequacy, and help banks to embark on aggressive debt recovery efforts, mitigate credit risk by limiting the concentration of credit of a certain risk category, and so on. So I agree that is some of the things that we need to do, and it's been identified here.
All right. And just on that note, we'll have to leave this discussion. We do hope that at some point in time we will, like other agencies, we're keeping an eye on the economic recovery and growth plan, ask the implementers to once again give us an insight into just how far. How well we've done.
That's a good one. Yeah.
It's 2017 already, and within the next 3 years or so, we might begin to see the benefits of this plan. But for this program, I'd like to say thank you to all our guests. Let me start off by thanking Tilewa Adibaju, who joined us from our Lagos Network Center. Thank you for being part of this discussion. We appreciate that.
For having me, Mr.
Thank you. And let me say thank you to Tumba Olufemi Samilayeku. Thank you for coming on this program.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right,
my pleasure, sir.
Good. And for Dr. Kechuku, it's always a delight to have you join us and share your experiences with us. Also for Senator Ahmed Abdul Qadir, thank you for being here tonight, sharing your experiences.
Thank you.
And Minister, it's always a pleasure to host you.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a plan for Nigeria.
All right. And so we also say thank you to you for being part of this discussion. Next week we'll reach you again on NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stover. Bye for now.
Yeah. Dr.